Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Atenas and this is Mode Bespoke. Today we're going to work on the mouse ears crochet blanket, and this is a toddler blanket that measures about 44 by 45 inches, so 112 centimeters about to 114. Now, as you can see, this pattern is made up of 3 stripes of little mouse ears. So you've got this one in the middle, the one on top, and then in the middle you have stripes in different colors. We're going to work this pattern in double crochets, skip stitches, and chains. So it's really simple, really easy to make, and it's very beginner friendly. So let's get started. So for this pattern, I used Comfy Cotton Blend yarn, and this is a Lion brand yarn. I used 4 skeins of the Ocean Breeze, and I will post all the information for the yarn on the blog in case you need to get a different type of yarn or you don't have access to this specific yarn. But yeah, I used 4 skeins of Ocean Breeze, and then I used 3 skeins of whipped cream. I also used an H hook, which is a 5mm hook. You're also going to need a tapestry or yarn needle, and you're going to need a pair of scissors. So the pattern for this project is available online, and you can find it on the blog. I'll post a link in the description box below, but you'll see the photo of the blanket and then all of the materials and everything, but you'll also see this diagram. So in the diagram, I'm showing you here how I worked my blanket. So it's the one that you saw in the intro. So as you can see, it has 7 mouse ears across. So I've got 7 of these little guys, and then I worked 4 rows in Ocean Breeze, and in between those little rows I did 2 rows of whipped cream. So each of these rows, here you can see it a little bit bigger here, so it's 7 rows in Ocean Breeze to make 1 stripe. The white stripe is 2 rows in whipped cream. So you can make these bigger, smaller, however you want, if you want to make the blanket any other size. You'll also see the diagram for the mouse ears. So this one on this side has all of the measurements. So it has all of your stitches already numbered. So one of these mouse ears is 21 stitches across. And it is also a total of 13 rows up. So that way you can have this little edge and you'll actually be able to see the little mouse ears. So it is 13 rows high. These little spaces, so this is the number of stitches, so 1 through 3 right here in the green is the number of stitches I have between the mouse ears. So if I pull this up right here and back up a little, I need to weave that in. We have 3 stitches here between the ears. So between the bottom part, since you are working the blanket from this bottom part up, you will need to count these stitches in between each of the mice. So that's this section here in yellow, so you'll be able to see 1 through 15. So you have 15 stitches going from one side to the other. And then here it is, another view of how big the mouse ears are. So if you have any questions on any of this, you can leave them here or you can leave them on the blog. You can also email me and I'm happy to help you work through this design. But like I said, the pattern is available on the blog, and you can also purchase the printable PDF file. You'll also get an online copy of it, so you can access it at any time. And if I have to update anything or edit anything on the online version, you'll have the latest version of it. So we're going to start with a slip knot. And to make your slip knot, you just grab your yarn and wrap it around 2 of your fingers, and then you're going to insert your hook into that loop you made. Pull the yarn through the loop, like so. And then I just hold it with my index finger so I can remove the fingers on my left hand. Go, and then I just tighten by pulling on the 2 strands of yarn. So there's our slip knot. Get that all nice and tightened. And then we are going to need to work on a chain, and the chain is going to be 276 stitches if you are making the same size blanket as the one I've made, so the one that's 44 by 45 inches. If you're going to make a different size blanket, I started with, here, I'll show you on the blanket itself. I made 12 stitches right here on this side. So I started with 12 stitches, so chain 12, and then from this side of the ear to this side, because it's the widest part, so here it's really narrow, so you need 21 stitches. So it'll be 12, 21, and then 15. And then from here on out, it's just 15 stitches between each of the little mouse ears. Now when you get to the other end, you're going to do your 15 stitches, and then your little mouse, and then here at the end, you do an additional 12. So that's just for your foundation chain. So again, if you're making the same size blanket I'm making, you're going to need 276 stitches. Now I'm just going to make a small sample, so we're going to just review this here. I'm going to start with a chain 12. So to make the chain, you're going to wrap the yarn around your hook, and you're going to pull it through the loop. See this one that's already on your hook. So that's 1. I'll zoom in and make it a little clearer for everyone. Okay, so let's do this again. You wrap the yarn around your hook, and you pull your hook through the loop. That's 2. So I'm going to make 12. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So that's the 12 I need just for the edge, so for the border. Now I want to make 1 mouse ear, so I need 21 additional stitches. So 1, 2, okay, so here are 21, so that's for my mouse. Now I need this to make 15 more so that I can have this space between the 2 mice. So we got 15 more. So 1, 2, 3, 13, 14, and 15. So now I can do 1 more mouse on this side. So after this I can make another one, and that would be if I wanted to have 2 mouse ears. Now since I'm only just going to show you how to read the diagram, I'm going to remove, let's see, 1, 2, 3, because I only need the 12. So if you're making just 1 mouse, that's it, because you want to use it for a patch or whatever it is you want to use it for, then you would do 12 stitches, and then 21, and then 12. So you can have the other border on either side, and it would be an even border. So that's what we're going to do. I'm just going to show you how to make the 1. So I just need the 12. So let's just pretend I have my large chain with 276 stitches. All right, so for our next row, so for row number 2, we need to chain 3. That is because with this yarn, if I want to have straight edges, sometimes if you work a double crochet you get wavy edges, but if you want straighter edges, we're going to need to chain 3. Whereas normally I chain 2 when I work a double crochet, we're going to do 3 here. So we're going to chain 1, 2, 3, and we're going to work our first double crochet in the 4th stitch from your hook, because that chain 3 counts as our first double crochet of the row. So to make our double crochet, we're going to yarn over, so wrap the yarn around your hook, count to the 4th stitch, so we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you can't see the stitches, just hold it this way and you're going to see the little V's. So each one of these V's is 1. So here's 1 V, so that's 1. Here's the next one, 2, 3, and then 4. So on this 4th stitch, you're going to insert your hook, and then you're going to yarn over, so wrap the yarn around your hook, pull that through the loop, pull your hook out like that. You're going to have 3 loops on your hook. So now what you're going to do is you're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So that's 1, 2. We have 2 loops left, so we're going to yarn over and pull through the 2 remaining loops. There we go. So that's our first double crochet. We're going to work 1 double crochet in every stitch of the row. So we'll review it again for everybody who needs to see it. So you yarn over, you're going to go into the very next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, and you're going to pull your hook out of the stitch. We're going to have 3 loops on our hook. So now you're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through the 2 remaining loops on the hook. So I'm just going to keep making a double crochet in every stitch of the row, and if you need to pause the video while you get yours done, go ahead and pause that, and I'll see you again here in just a few moments. So we have finished the row, and I made a double crochet in every stitch, and now we're going to begin our next row with a chain 3. So we have 1, 2, 3, and we're going to turn our work around, and that does count as our first double crochet of the row. So we are going to skip to the second one. So skip the first stitch, which is this little guy, because that counts as a double crochet. So we skip the first stitch and go into the second stitch. So we're just going to start with a double crochet in the second stitch, yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, pull up a loop, then you're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So there we go. So now we have 2 double crochets. We're going to need to crochet 18. So remember that this first chain does count as a double crochet. Now why do I say 18? Because we've started with 12 additional stitches for the border. So we have our initial 12, and then if you look here on the diagram, we have an extra 6 stitches. So if we add those 6 stitches to the 12 that we have, that's 18 double crochets. So we've already got 2, so we'll go with 3, and then 4, and just keep crocheting until you have 18 double crochets. So here we have 18 double crochets. There we go. So here are all 18 double crochets that we needed. And now we go back to the chart. So we've already crocheted our first row, and we're working on the second one. So if you look on the chart, row number 1, which is this one right here, they're all white little squares. The white squares are double crochets. So here's our first row of double crochet, the same as the one that we have on our chart. White little squares are the double crochets, and the little black squares, which you see over here, those are skip stitches. So we're going to start with this very first one. So to crochet your skip stitch, it's going to be a chain and a skip. So let me get this moved out of the way. So we're going to make the first little black square on the diagram. So we're going to need to chain 1. We're going to skip this stitch, which is stitch number 19, go to stitch number 20, and double crochet into 20. So there we go. So now we have a little chain space. This chain, if you don't make the chain, you're going to lose your stitch count. So it helps create a nice open little chain space that'll look like a square. It'll match the diagram, and it'll also keep your your stitch counts. Now we're going to need to make 5 of these. So here's the first one. So now we chain 1. We're going to skip the next stitch, go to the one after that, and double crochet. So see, now we have 2. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and then double crochet in the stitch after that one. We're at 3, so we chain 1, skip a stitch, go into the next one, and then we double crochet there. So we have 4, chain 1, skip a stitch, go to the next one, and double crochet for 5. So now we have 5 chain spaces, which, there we go, we have 5 right here on this second row, and that's going to be the foundation for our little mouse ears. So I'm going to make a few double crochets just to make it a little easier to see, and that way I can explain to you how we're going to work the remaining part of this row. So here we go. So we have our 5 chain spaces, and then this first double crochet will count as the first one of the 15 that you're going to make between this mouse ear and the next one. So if you're making a row of 7, you're going to make these 5 skip stitches and then 15 double crochets, and then you start your skip stitches again. So here, I'll show you on the blanket. So here is the section we just completed with the skip stitches. This section right here has 15 double crochets. And then here's a repeat of our skip stitches. and then another section of 15 stitches. You're just going to keep repeating this every time you make a new mouse head. So if you're making the 7 of them, you're going to do your 7 little mice with the 15 stitches in between, and at the end of the row, we're going to have 18. So I'll keep working the rest of my row. Go ahead and pause the video, and that way you can finish this row as well, and I'll see you when we're at the end of it. So I'm at the end of the row, and I have 2 double crochets left, but let me zoom in so I can show you. So I have one last double crochet, which is right here, before I get to my chain space. So I'll just make this double crochet, and now there are 2 ways to end the row. If your chain is a little tight, so see how you can see all your chain stitches, you can just make the last double crochet into that chain space directly. So in this space right here, that will leave a little bit of a gap though. So what I prefer to do is option number 2, which is to stitch your double crochet into the top stitch of the chain. So just insert your hook into that very topmost stitch and make your double crochet there. So there we go, we finished row number 2. So for row number 3, we're going to start with a chain 3. You're going to turn your work around, and then we're going to take a look at our chart. So let me grab the chart, and for this next row, we're going to go to row number 3. See, this is the row we just finished. We now need to add an extra stitch on the right and then one on the left at either end of our skip stitches. So as you can see, right at the very ends, we add 1 stitch and it starts going outward to create the round effect at the bottom of the head. So we're going to scoot 1 stitch over on the right and then 1 also on the left. So I'm going to double crochet all the way until I get to this stitch over here. You're just going to leave the very last double crochet right before your first skip stitch. So right before your first chain space, you're going to leave that one. So double crochet until you get to that point, and I will see you again here in a minute. Alright, so we've arrived. See, I've got my last 2 double crochets right before my chain space, so I'm going to crochet 1 more double crochet into this next stitch, and we're left with 1 double crochet right before the chain space. So now we have to shift our chain space over 1 in this row, so we're going to do this by chaining 1, and then we're going to skip the stitch that corresponds to the double crochet and go to the chain space. So this little space right here, we're going to make our double crochet directly into the chain space. So not into a stitch or anything. So we're going to double crochet in the chain space. And there we go. We've shifted the chain over 1 space so that it matches our diagram. Now for the next few stitches, you're going to stitch into the double crochet. So here's the double crochet and here's the stitch, excuse me. So we're going to double crochet into the stitch, and then the next stitch we have to double crochet in the chain space, and now we double crochet into the stitch above this double crochet, so this one, and now we double crochet into the chain space, and then we double crochet into the stitch above the double crochet, double crochet into the chain space, double crochet into the stitch, and now we're at that last chain space. So here it is, very last one. We need to do the opposite of what we did on that other side. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our double crochet into the chain space, and then we have to shift this little gap or little chain space over 1. So we're going to chain 1, we're going to skip the first stitch and go into the second one. So there we go. And now we've shifted it over 1 space. So now the rest of the row, I just keep working my double crochets. And if you're going to make the rest of the little mouse ears, just do the same number of stitches as you have between the two mice on this row. So this is row number 3. So I'm going to keep working all of my double crochets, and then I'm going to chain 3, work all the double crochets on the next row until I get to these top stitches so that I can show you how to follow the diagram. This will help us save a little bit more time in the video, that way we can move along a little bit quicker. So I'll keep working this. I'm going to double crochet until I get to this stitch over here, and I will see you when we get there. So I'm on row number 4, and I've left my last 2 double crochets right before my mouse ears so that I can show you how we're going to work the rest of the pattern. So here we are. We've got the one last double crochet left between our chain space, and now we have to shift our stitch over one. So we're going to chain 1. We're going to work into the chain space to make our double crochet, and there we go. We've now shifted over 1 stitch, and now we're just going to double crochet until we get to the other side, and this is just following the diagram. All right, so we're just going to double crochet until we get to this other chain space, and we're going to shift our stitch over 1. So I've double crocheted into every stitch. So I've got a double crochet into this last stitch right here. Now we're at that chain space again. So we're on the other side. We're going to double crochet into the chain space. So there we go. And now we chain 1. We're going to skip this next double crochet, so skip the stitch above it. Go to the second double crochet. So here it is. We're going to double crochet into the second one. So this is going to be the stitch we skip. So skip that one, go to the second double crochet, and then make another double crochet. And there we go. So this is row number 4. As you can see, we already have the shape of the head is coming along. It's getting nice and round. So I'm just going to keep double crocheting so I can finish my row, and then I'm going to come back around the other way for row number 5. Row number 5, and I did all of my double crochets, and I did chain 3 and came all the way around until we got to the chain spaces. Now let's look at our chart, and so we're row number 5 now, and we have to shift 1 more, and then row 6 and 7 we just make our chain spaces right one above the other. So we have to shift, excuse me, 1 more for this row. So we're going to do a chain 1. We're going to skip that last double crochet before the chain space and double crochet into the chain space. And now we just double crochet into every stitch until we get to the next chain space. And we have to shift that one as well. So we have to move it over 1 space. So once you get to this one, just shift it over 1 more stitch. And then work all of your double crochets to the end of the row. So all the way up to here, chain 3, work all the way around until you get to this stitch on row number 6. So here we are at row number 6 now. I did all my double crochets, chain 3, and all of my double crochets in row 6. So now let's look at our chart. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're on row, here we go, number 6. So as you can see, row number 6, we're just stacking the stitch one above the other, and this is for the next 2 rows. So row number 6 and row number 7 are going to be worked the same way. So to stack your stitches, so we have to stack the chain spaces. We're going to work a double crochet into this last double crochet. So in previous rows when we were working here, we were skipping it because we had to shift it over 1. Now we have to stack them. So work your double crochet into that last double crochet before the gap space. So here we go. And you're going to chain 1 to create another gap space. And now make your next double crochet in the very first stitch. So there we go. So now we have stacked them. So here's the bottom one, here's the top one. We made our chain spaces in the same place. Now we're just going to keep double crocheting until we get to this next chain space, and I'll show you how to do it one more time in case that was a little confusing. So I'll try to work through these stitches quickly. So here we go. So we're on the other side. So we have to stack the stitches again. So make your double crochet in the last double crochet before the gap space. So here's the gap space. Now we're going to chain 1. We're going to double crochet into the first double crochet after the gap stitch. So the one we normally skipped when we were shifting over one stitch. So let me make a couple of double crochets here, and then I'll pull this away a little so you can see this. So here we go. So now we have stacked our chain spaces. So you're going to repeat this for one more row. So here, let me get one of these top mouse heads that are a little bit neater to see. So for the rest of the pattern, here's what you're going to work. So we have the stacked stitches, so you're going to need to do one more. So we've done the 4 going up, so that's row 5. Row 6 and 7, you're stacking your stitches, just like you see here in the diagram. That's these right here. And then for row number 8, you have these 2 chain spaces. So you have a chain space, and then a double crochet, and then a chain space, just like we do on the diagram. And then for the next few stitches, or for the next few rows, the next few rows, you're just going to follow the diagram. So when you get to the top part of the ear, you're going to have to pay close attention because you're going to have a bunch of extra chain spaces that you didn't have in the previous rows. So here we have 4. Here, but this is a little difficult using my fingers, so I'm just going to grab a sheet of paper, and that way I won't move the screen so much. All right, so moving on to the next couple of rows. So if you use a sheet of paper or Post-it or anything, it'll be easier to follow along. So row number 10, as you can see, you have 5 stitches, so you have 5 chain spaces. Row number 11, you have 4, 12, you have 4. So just follow along on the numbered chart, on the number diagram. If you use a Post-it, like I said, or a sheet of paper or anything, you'll be able to follow along easily. And you'll see row number 13 is all double crochets. So keep working the rest of the pattern the same way that we worked at the beginning part. And now when you get to the top of row number 13, we're going to switch colors since we are working from the bottom to the top. So let me just get everything moved over real quick, and I'll show you here. So here's row 13, like how we have it on our diagram. It's just a row of double crochets, so if I cover the rest of the mouse here, it's a little easier for you to see it. So row number 14, we're going to switch color. So whether you're using Ocean Breeze or any other color, we're going to switch color and just work double crochets. So it's going to be 7 rows of double crochets in your second color, then 2 rows in whipped cream, and then 7 rows in your second color, and so forth and so on, just like you have on that very first diagram on the pattern. So I'm not going to go into detail about it because there is a diagram that you can follow. So I'm going to finish this last row, and then we're going to switch colors. So here we are. So when you finish the last stitch of the row, so this is row number 13, you're going to want to switch colors. So what you're going to do is leave a nice long tail in color number B, wrap the yarn around your hook, and then just pull your hook through the stitch you already have on it, like so. So with both of your threads of yarn, so see I'm holding both of them, we're going to start our chain. So I'm just going to chain 1 with both threads of yarn. So there we go. And we're going to make that really, really tight. So here I'm going to chain 3. So I know I've already chained 1, but that's to help secure the yarn. So I'm going to chain 3 really tightly knit chains. So there we go. So there's chain 3. Now I can pull on all of these threads and tighten everything up. So tighten this here. If I were to continue making the blanket, I would leave a long tail of yarn here and cut it, because you are going to be switching colors several times and your color switches don't exactly line up on the same side. So you're going to want to cut your thread. Now, continuing with the rest of the row, you're just going to start working your double crochets the same way you did on row number 1 and row number 13. So after you've done your chain 3, you're going to skip the very first stitch of the row, and you're going to start to double crochet into the second stitch. So that way you have a color change. So here we go. So this is what your color change is going to look like. So once you finish your blanket, you're going to be left with a bunch of little threads of yarn that you're going to have to weave in. If you're an experienced crocheter and know how to do this, you are done. Just follow the chart, look at the rest of the pattern, and you'll be able to make your blanket. Now for those who don't know how to weave in ends, because this is your first crochet project, let's review what we're going to need. So here are 2 needles. This is a yarn needle. See, it's really big. There are lots of different sizes in yarn needles. I prefer to use a tapestry needle when I'm using a yarn this small. As you can see, it's not sharp. It's not a very pointy needle or anything, but the end here where we're going to thread the yarn is very wide, so it fits my yarn. This yarn needle I typically use when I use chunky yarns, but if you're using a light or a medium weight yarn, then you can just use a tapestry needle and it would work just fine. So now all you have to do is thread your needle, whichever one you prefer to use. It doesn't really matter as long as your yarn fits. And to weave in your ends, and you're going to do this for all the ends of yarn you have left. We're going to start to sew on one side of our crochet project. So straight down. I'm not going into it because I'm not sewing anything together. I'm just hiding the ends of yarn I have left. So I'm just going to give a quick little stitch, and notice it's a short stitch. It's not anything really long, and it's just on one side of my crochet work. And then I'm going to switch directions. So I'm going to create a very short stitch. See, I'm just going to go through and behind my stitches so that I hide my yarn. Then I'm going to switch directions, and now I'm going to stitch up just a short little stitch. And depending on the stitching that you use on whatever project, just stop your stitch wherever it is best, so wherever you can hide your yarn better. So it'll be a little different with every project that you do. But the point is to switch directions as often as you can, and that will make it very difficult for your work to unravel. So you'll be able to machine wash it and your work won't unravel at all. So now with this little tail end of yarn, what I do is I just pull on it, and then I cut it at the very end. Then you tug it a little more, and it'll help hide this little thread of yarn. And that's it. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below. Don't forget to check out the blog where you can find the free pattern, and you can also purchase the PDF version of the pattern so that you can print out all of your charts. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. I post videos every Thursday. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and share if you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you all again next week.